What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing day 2. That's rounds 2 and 3 of this 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to go check out day 1, round 1, because it's going to be a little bit more enjoyable to watch it unfold live, just like this is going to be a live mock draft as well. But we will be doing a quick little recap, going over the trades, etc. So let's get into it. Below my face is my board. If you wonder why it's like that, which there's guys continually being shifted, it is solely based off of my all 22 grades. I do actually put all 22 clips over on my X page, which is easy to get to by just going to do 2 little clicks to that link tree and then to the X page. If you guys want to do 1 extra click, you guys can end up actually going over to our sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy, where you can get up to 60, or not 60, I get $60, but you guys get up to 1,000 in bonus cash. Full transparency there, but they're a good platform. I use them. It's legal in Texas, where some other sports books are not. But recap time. We're going to have a good time today. Maybe we could, keep this a little bit more expedited for fun circumstances. But you guys know me. I'm a yapper. I'm a professional yapper. That's what I get paid for. But regardless, again, you guys can read. I'm going to only talk about the trades and or placeholders. That's usually what I do. But there's no placeholders, I believe. But regardless, we had a quick little trade up here. We had the Saints move up to select their star receiver. I think Clint Kubiak's really going to totally enjoy having Tetairoa McMillan on the squad. We basically leverage a 2nd and a 4th round pick to do that. Technically, that is adequate, if not even a ripoff of the Titans. So I think that that's a pretty damn good deal to secure one of the few top targets of the class. And then, of course, via that trade back, we had the Titans end up landing someone right down the street in Knoxville in James Pierce. But we actually had a pretty strong stalemate for the majority of the draft. But we did have the Eagles move up and jump the Bills for Mykel Williams, developmental edge rusher that can continue growing and developing just like the rest of the Georgia players have been doing so on the Eagles. But regardless, someone who can technically play stand-up, who can also play with his hand in the dirt. And then, of course, via that trade back, we had the Vikings pretty much essentially getting 4th round pick to be able to select Wyatt Milam and just continue bolstering their overall pick compensation. But yeah, a lack of trades compared to what you guys know me. I get really excited to do trades. But I do want to say before we get into this, Ben Morrison, to me, until he declares, is going to be returning. You see exactly where he's at on my board at number 4 overall. Technically, it's number 3. I realize that my calculation of the weighted grade of my running backs are slightly off. And so, well, only for Ashton Genty. He's actually the same grade as Amari and Hampton. Spoiler alert for my running back video. That should be coming out tomorrow. The graphics are now complete. Super excited for that. But at number 33 for the Las Vegas Raiders, I think the smart thing to do would be to look at wide receiver, running back, etc. And, you got your quarterback in place. Is there any position where we could end up trading down? Because maybe you want to have a team move up for LT Overton. I'm trying to get Jahdae Barron to get a little bit more love than what he's getting right now. And, to be fair, LT Overton's a really good edge rusher. And I can see a team like the Bears getting excited. They have a multitude of picks. You can end up sending essentially a 5th round pick to be able to move up, maybe a 4th round pick if, you get fleeced by the Raiders, to be able to move up and select a top tier edge rusher, but doesn't really fit the profile. There's also a lot of edge rushers, not really a big momentum shift for me to want to do that. So I just don't know if there's anybody worth moving up for. Wide receiver wise, I'm going to have Isaiah Bond return in this as well. He just had a shitty year. He's a true junior. No reason to come out when it's millions on the line for him, because he can go back to school and make money, but also he can end up coming out in the draft next year and end up probably being a 1st round pick if all goes well. So with the Las Vegas Raiders kind of being stuck here at this pick, I think you just need to make the most of it and be able to get a real quality player. And to be fair, again, ton of edge rushers. Malcolm Kuntz not necessarily guaranteed to come back. You could try to go that route, but I do want to be able to explore. You could also talk about interior offensive line at this point with Tyler Booker and pair him up with JPJ and see if that could be a working arrangement for the long run. Not going to lie, I've been trying to boost Tyler Booker's stock because I do think he should be going in the top 40. You know what? Let's roll the dice. Let's do it because we have that extra 3rd round pick. But Tyler Booker's a fantastic player. And then last draft, you ended up drafting interior offensive lineman in the 2nd as well. So continuing to protect Shedeur Sanders is going to be super duper key because he's not super mobile as well. So you got to do what you got to do. At number 34 for the New York Giants, corner is going to be the name of the game. That's just how we rock here. And with all the really good corners still relatively on the board, I did actually get a little bit more excited when it comes to taking some of the corners that are usually here. We still have Siobhan Revell, and let's not play games. Again, I'm having Ben Morrison return in this one. Siobhan Revell is just a very, very talented player that needs to get respect, and we're going to give it to him. At 35 for the New England Patriots, it's an interesting spot to be in because we end up, like, all my mock drafts right now, I'm suggesting that T. Higgins is going to be a big free agent landing target for you guys, based on money, based on just the predictive odds at the moment. And so we took Travis Hunter in the first round to be a defensive back, and, worst case scenario, you might get the best safety in the NFL, which, I mean, that's just something I'm starting to believe for Travis Hunter might be the best position for him is the safety. Not because he can't play corner, but because I think he could be a transcendent level talent at that position, which technically you guys could be going for. But I am looking at the offensive tackles here, and you got Josh Connerly, you got Armand Membu, you got Jack Nelson. Those are kind of the holy trinity of dudes who are here in the second round, and I think I'm going to have them go pretty much back to back to back at this point. Now the question is, which one do the Patriots want to get? And I think because you technically have interior offensive line versatility, you just kind of want to go after the player. Well, I think you have enough guys who are interior offensive line versatile. Like last draft, we ended up getting Caden Wallace. Probably should be a guard. That's the way I loved him the most, is as a guard. And then you have Layden Robinson developing as well. Hopefully the interior of the offensive line can stay relatively solidified. You want to go after a true left tackle here. And Josh Connerly, 6'4", 315, could be that. He's had the highest level reps out of the three. Well, Armand's done a great job, but Armand came into the year with guard questions as well. The one who has it is Jack Nelson. Jack Nelson's a phenomenal player. I don't know why Trev doesn't like him. Just simply put, I don't. Even after regrading him after a pretty big struggle game, he still ended up being a top 64 player for me. Like, I tried to continue regrading these players as often as possible, and, even he got better as the year went on too. I mean, he had a struggle part of the year, and then he did get better. And I mean, like, look at the teams he's facing, to be fair. Like, these are it's not a piece of cake schedule by any stretch of the imagination. And so I'm going to go Jack Nelson. He's a true left tackle, 6'7", 312. And Caden Wallace shouldn't be one. Like, I believe Jack Nelson legitimately is a starting left tackle in the NFL if he's in the right situation. We'll see from here what happens. I think that you got to do what you got to do, and Jack Nelson's going to be the best guy for the job. At number 36 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I will be going offensive lineman here, but I also want to be able to go interior for this team. There's a lot of positions I think the Jaguars could address. Technically running back's not off the board. I mean, ETN's been essentially run out of the building, no pun intended, but, just has been a non-factor. And it's a great way to be able to allow Trevor Lawrence to have a little bit of a stress relief is by being able to go after these running backs who are near the top here. And my God, looking at this, I can literally tell that my video that I'm going to be doing about these running backs, very, very different from Trevor's rankings. Like, very noticeably different. I haven't taken a moment to truly look at it, and I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a fun one. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. But I'm actually going to go Josh Connerly here. I'm going to put him to guard. Well, that's just such a disservice to him. We can't do that. Is there a team that potentially wants an offensive tackle that'd be willing to jump the Bears? And I'm looking at one right here in the Titans. I think they might be interested in moving up. I also think that the Browns could be interested. But more importantly than anything, I'm looking at the Jets right now. And the Jets need off defensive positions, but that right tackle spot, both your left and right tackle veterans are going to be up for a contract. You have pretty much one player right now that is, solidified as a legitimate starting tackle, and that's Olu Fashanu, he's still developing and growing. But you guys do need to get a right tackle, and based on the fact that I just don't feel comfortable with the player for Jacksonville at the moment, I think that's the best thing you can do. The Jets are not going to give you a third-round pick for that type of move up, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think if you can end up finagling 144 for a 4-spot move up, you could technically talk about 109. Like, maybe you get 109, but you end up getting back like 140 or 178. Like, you guys can do that math. It's not going to be massively affecting the mock draft. So the Jets end up moving up, and the Jaguars get some proper value for moving back. And so the Jets have moved up to select a right tackle here who's had a dominant year, and I mean a dominant year, in Armand Membou. Being able to solidify that right side is super duper key. Worst case scenario, he kicks into guard, but we've seen Olu Fashanu take those guard reps this year. The role is certainly available. So worst case scenario, you're getting yourself a top tier interior offensive lineman. Probably will be going in the top 32, but for the time being, he is here at 36. At 37 for the Bears, we're going to be going offensive tackle here as well with Josh Connerly. I told you the holy trinity of guys. We're going with that holy trinity. If you have to move him into guard, let's just say Braxton Jones continues to develop and becomes your solidified guy, 6'4", 315, it could be perfect for a guard build as well. Josh Connerly is extremely athletic. He's a 5-star, so has a good pedigree. Oregon, great pedigree as well. But on top of that, a very powerful blocker and just somebody who's taken a massive step up this year. He's top 20 on certain people's boards that I respect. And so 37, that's a pretty damn good deal. I'll just say that. At number 38 for the Tennessee Titans, we moved back, and then we ended up acquiring some extra draft capital. We got that extra second-round pick. Woo woo. And so we have some capital to play with. And so we ended up getting our edge rusher to start out. I don't think there's going to be another tackle that I'm super comfortable with at this point. So let's not force a need, right? Forcing a need is the dumbest thing to do. Now, of course, all these edge rushers are slipping. That's kind of the name of the game. You could try to go a wide receiver here, and actually, I wouldn't really blame you. Io Maynor, Higgins, as well as Royals, I think are the guys who I love to death. But I do think it's more of a 42 pick issue rather than right here at 38. You can talk about quarterback with Jalen Milroe, but I mean, we saw what happened last time with Malik Willis, and I'm not saying Jalen Milroe's on that same trajectory by any means, but athleticism is not necessarily rewarded in the system either. And you look at Brian Callahan, he was with Joe Burrow. And so, I mean, I think you want to stick to your strengths rather than essentially trying to continue throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. But because of that, I mean, Jalen Milroe is here. We could see a team try to move up and kind of get somebody to develop. I'm just not fully sold on Jalen Milroe being viewed as that kind of prospect. So again, we have all these amazing edge rushers here, including guys I have in the top 15. You see at 14, JT Tuimoloau, and that includes a couple guys above him that could be slipping as well due to reevaluation. It's just you're in a tough spot. I think you got to make the most of it. There's just not really anybody who's worth moving up for certain teams. And so because of that, I mean, you could talk about the Dolphins trying to move up for a defensive interior because the Bears are looking at one. You could technically talk about the Jaguars and the Browns looking at one as well. And we could get a little bit ballsy here with the Dolphins because we had that extra 4th round pick. We could try to flip it with that 3rd round pick to essentially move up to the end of the 3rd and reacquire that 3rd round pick. And you know what? I like that. I like that a lot. I think the Dolphins need to be able to prioritize offensive line, but also defense. And I think it's going to be super key. They're going to toss in pick 99 into this equation, but we're going to give the 4th round pick from Washington to be able to make it happen. Maybe it'll be 142. Who gives a shit? I mean, at the end of the day, does it really matter? Not necessarily. But again, I think that I personally would be willing to make this move. You're moving up essentially 24 spots to be moving back 5. Maybe we could do 142. Again, doesn't really affect this mock draft. Feel free to adjust it in your own head. But the Dolphins are moving up to select one of the best defensive interiors in the class, and that's Omar Norman-Lott. I have him graded as a top 32 player. He's actually a top 20 player on my board as well, and that includes certain players above him that could be slipping upon reevaluation. So Omar Norman-Lott is an absolute beast. I've taken him in the first of the Dolphins as well. And I know that it's a pain in the ass not to get offensive linemen, but at the end of the day, your offensive system is the quickest time to throw, so it has the least emphasis from management on going for offensive line early. Just doesn't have that type of emphasis on offensive line the way that it should, but it just doesn't. At 39, we got the Cleveland Browns. In the first round, I think they actually took a big curveball approach and went after Abdul Carter. Here at pick number 39, I think the easiest way to get this offense functioning again is through the run game. Technically, you can talk about offensive line, but there's just not really an option here. Talk about wide receiver as well, and I'd honestly be listening very closely. But Quinshon Judkins used to, I mean, he's used to Ohio, right? Performs very well. The only reason he didn't perform well is because his offensive line didn't perform well, because not because it was like, okay, mediocre offensive line play. No, it was absolute butt cheeks offensive line play. And feel free to watch it for yourself. It was an absolute embarrassment watching that line play. But Quinshon is the better back of the two. I think that he's clearly one of the best running backs in the class. And even after a tough year, which I think he should return, but even after a tough year, I think everybody could watch how he played and be like, yeah, that's not his fault. So I'm not going to give him too heavy of a tax for that. I'm going to see, like, this is a really solid running back class. Some guys who I didn't really expect to love that I really ended up loving. And so Quinshon definitely going to be a great option for the Browns as they continue to develop both sides of the ball. At number 40 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we have moved back and we selected Will Johnson in the first. You technically could look at HAILMARY here as well. Honestly, wouldn't be against that too much. But looking at the interior offensive linemen, we have kind of depleted it. I traded back and I ended up low-key fucking this team over, except for Donovan Jackson. Actually, I really like that because worst case scenario, you could develop him to grow behind Walker Little, who you guys gave a contract to. But you guys get yourself a top-tier interior offensive lineman who has now tackle experience in case of injury as well. So you got your extra pick, and then you actually get somebody who is top 20 on my board currently. At number 41 for the Chicago Bears, we ended up, we've kind of screwed the Bears over. Technically, if you look at the fact that I wanted to go Donovan Jackson again for him on top of Josh Connerly. But we got Josh Connerly, we got Ashton Jeanty. That's kind of how you end up retooling and rebuilding this line. I think it'd be a disservice to pass on edge rusher at this point. I want to go heavy interior offensive line, but when you can get Shamar Stewart, LT Overton, Princely Umamiel, and JT Tumalau at this point, Mike Green as well, it's a disservice to yourselves not to look that way. I mean, you could try to trade out of this spot because at 73, we could get a really quality one as well. The question is, if we're going to go offensive line, who do we go for? Probably Marcus Bowe. Marcus Bowe is a very talented right tackle who I just think is going to be a lot better as a guard. And a lot of people do worry about that arm length. I remember he's a friend of the show. He came on in the offseason, and when we ended up talking to him, he ended up saying he had over 30-inch arms, which, thank God. But, the real metric is 32. Like 30, technically it's 33, but 32, if you have sub 32 arms, you're not going to be playing tackle in the NFL. So I do think that Marcus Bowe is going to be taken a little bit higher than what people think. It's going to be very similar to Armand Membu because Marcus Bowe is fantastic. You just have to kick him to the inside. And, the question is, would any of these other teams take Bowe? I don't think so. Like, maybe the Niners would be in that group, but the Niners took an offensive lineman in Josh Simmons earlier on, so I don't think they'd be going doubling down. So, I think this is a good spot to trade back. I do. Because again, there's so many top talents, including HAILMARY here, and is there a team that might be looking for an upgrade at wide receiver? I'm looking pretty heavily at the Cowboys here because HAILMARY's available. They could definitely use that wide receiver upgrade. Of course, they could also use a defensive interior upgrade, which I know I'm going to be taking one minimum for the Bengals. And so who's available at defensive interior? You got TJ Sanders, you got Derek Harmon. I don't feel too threatened as the Cowboys to move up for that, but I actually might feel threatened as the Niners to move up for that. And I don't see any of these teams drafting Marcus Bowe. I'm actually going to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, and trade up with the 49ers to select the top tier defensive interior talents that are available because I think this team needs it. So for this range of trade, I think we might just toss in a 4th round pick. Just, if I'm the Bears, just give me one of those. You could talk about 101 and then you could end up giving back like 145, but you could end up getting 116 and being perfectly happy. You add an extra pick, it actually bolsters this range right here that there is a gap, and just call it a day. Because we're still going to get the same exact guy there at 47. We get some extra cushion, so to speak. And so we got Jeanty, we have Connerly, and then we're going to have Marcus Bowe. But regardless, we could have went defensive interior here for the Bears. I just didn't want to. And so for the San Francisco 49ers, you got TJ Sanders, you got Derek Harmon. I'm going to go after Derek because he does have a little bit better of a build at 310 than 290 for Sanders. And so I allowed the Niners to select their fate. They went offensive lineman in the first with Josh Simmons, and they went defensive interior in the second with Derek Harmon. At number 42 for the Tennessee Titans, We're going to go after wide receiver here, and we're going to go Io Maynor. I think it's about time. This dude's been actually relatively productive on a horrible Stanford offense. I don't know if he comes out or transfers because, well, that's college nowadays, but I think this dude's a really, really solid receiver. He's improved year over year, and so I'm going to show him the love that he deserves. At 43 for the Titans, you might not have even a quarterback, so that is a concern if you want to go after someone like Jalen Milroe, but in all actuality, you could end up trading for Kirk Cousins, and by trading, I think with the contract he has, you could be traded a pick to be able to take on part of said contract. I'm just going to put that out there. That might be a good idea in Callahan's offense. I think he'd work better than what has happened there in Atlanta, and you could basically be able to get a quarterback for free. I digress, though. We're not going to test that theory out just yet. We've got an edge rusher. We've gotten ourselves a wide receiver. And so now I honestly want to continue moving down the board because offensive tackle is key to me. Again, I think Marcus Bowe's interior, so there's no real reason for me to take him at this spot. The rest of the tackles are kind of guard hybrids, so I don't see a need to be able to go after one of them at this point. And with the quality edge rushers on the board, I mean, technically the Colts could be right up the alley with that. They also could be up the alley with defensive interior here. I'm thinking about it. I mean, TJ Sanders would not be a bad pick for the Bengals or the Colts. We actually might have another trade here. The Titans trade down twice because I don't think that the Dallas Cowboys are going to be wanting to get to lose out on this opportunity. And for this such a short range trade, I think 168 to me would be perfect. I mean, you could talk about 150. To me, I don't give a shit. Feel free to do whatever you would like, whatever your little heart desires. We're going to give Tennessee a little bit of an extra pick, and so the Cowboys move up. They've already drafted their star running back in Amari and Hampton. I thought about going wide receiver, but when you can go TJ Sanders here, I mean, the value is impeccable. I mean, he truly is a top 50 player in the class at a position of need, and he's an amazing player. 290, yes, but also Osa Digizua wasn't the most massive guy on planet Earth. Technically, the role he will be replacing, but an amazing defensive interior talent he's a relentless motored player, and I think he's going to be a really, really good addition. And number 44 for the Indianapolis Colts, we went tight end early. The tight ends flew off the board if you guys didn't pick up on that in the beginning. We had to go Colson Loveland at 12 because Warren ended up actually going at pick number 8. So at this selection, I still think you could look at that secondary. You guys know how much I love to go Nick Ebenwari to this team. I think that dude's a savage, but let's change things up a little bit. I do think that defensive back is not the worst position for this team because that's why I do it every week. But with the quantity of edge rushers available, I think it's a disservice to not go after one. And Princey Umamielen feels very similar in terms of that technician to what you guys have right now with Leatu Latu. So I'd honestly rather have someone who's going to be a little bit more sizable, who has a little bit more of a day one impact, and that's going to be JT Tuimalau. He's someone who doesn't get any respect, and I feel bad for that, but JT really is an absolute baller. I mean, he's done better every single year. I've been someone who's been a big hater of JT Tuimalau, so it's interesting being on this side of the equation, but I do think that he deserves a lot more respect. He should be a first-round pick, but JT Tuimalau is going to be the selection at 44. So there we go. Bengals took Nick Scorton in the first round. Technically, it would have been probably better just to sit and wait, but I didn't expect the edge rushers to fall like this. I think the best way to be able to salvage the situation is to go and get ourselves a ball-hawking defensive back in Nick Ebenwari. We're going to swap it right here. 6'3", 227, and he flies. Might be 4'3", might be even 4'2". And this guy has multiple pick sixes on the year, 4 interceptions. This is somebody that you do not want to fuck around and find out with. And with that type of range, I mean, imagine in the cold weather when these quarterbacks don't have as good of a grip and the ball just slightly doesn't grab the fingers as well, and it just kind of drifts a little bit, has a little bit too much hang time, and you have someone who's 6'3", 227, long arms, and great ball skills lurking over the middle. And to me as a Steelers fan, that scares the shit out of me, so I think that's a good pick. At number 46 for the Tennessee Titans, we've continued to move back. I mean, I've been continuing to avoid any sort of move for the Titans at this point that is relatively definitive. But defensive back with Jahdae Barron might just be too good of value. I just don't see a great move for this team. I mean, we've moved back so much that Jalen Milroe might have to be the pick. I mean, we've already taken Io Maynor at this point. Like, that's a good pick. But besides that, I mean, running back, you could try to get another one. I'm not a big Caleb Johnson guy. I'm just going to spoil my video tomorrow. But, like, I don't think offensive line is going to be worth it either. Like, defensive back-wise, don't think it's necessarily pertinent for us to go after that route. Corner, my boy Jarvis Brownlee's doing well. Super excited for that. Like, linebacker, I don't think these guys are necessarily going to be, moving the needle for me, so to speak. I could trade back again if I really wanted to, because you got guys like LT Overton here and all these other guys that, might be worth it a little bit more. You could, well, to be fair, there are multiple receiver positions available. I would not be surprised if you actually double down on receiver and go Jalen Royals at this point, because you can have Io Maynor, Ridley, and Royals. Royals is your after the catch threat. Ridley, technically the route running separator. Then Io Maynor, more of the big X type. You know what? Let's respect it. No team's going to trade back like 60 times. And so we're going to go Jalen Royals here at 46. I love Jalen Royals. He ended off the year with an ankle injury, but he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. People say he gets up to 4.3 speed, but the best thing about him is like career contested catch percentage is like 60%. This past year is 38.5, but it started out at like 20%. So that means over these last few games, he ended up like really jumping up that number. But after the catch, this dude's phenomenal. He makes dudes miss 24/7. And, just somebody that you definitely want on your squad. I want him on my Steelers, so I'm giving you guys the guy who I would dream to my Steelers. And honestly, it was the pick that I kind of wanted to do for the Bears at 47. But for the Bears, if I ended up losing out on Marcus Bowe, that was going to be my pick. We already got Josh Connerly to play left tackle or left guard. We're actually going to go Marcus Bowe here to play interior offensive lineman for us as well. Friend of the show ended up coming on, but, he's ferocious. He's somebody who is also used to, like, right around there. I'm forgetting where Purdue is. Is it like Indiana? But regardless, who gives a shit? Midwest territory, I think. Man, I might be totally wrong about that too. But regardless of that, used to inclement weather, Purdue, Big Ten. But on top of that, he's extremely mobile, very powerful. Just the arm length doesn't necessarily lead him to be a legitimate starting tackle in the NFL. I think he's going to be a real quality guard. At number 48 for the Atlanta Falcons, we took an edge rusher in the first. And you guys ended up saying, Alex, do not look at tackle for us just yet. I respect that. I think with the quantity of edge rushers available at the value that they have, I think that we can't ignore them. LT Overton has the most potential out of the class. I think he'll end up going back to school, but we land him here at 48. At 49 for the Arizona Cardinals, again, ended up mentioning this before. Shout out to my boys who have ended up kind of guiding me on the Arizona Cardinals and like giving me their thought process. And basically, you guys are highlighting the fact that this team is not ready for another smaller outside linebacker edge rusher based on the contract of Zaven Collins, as well as B.J. Ojolari, as well as potentially bringing back Baron Browning as well. But I do think you can pair up Shamar Stewart with Darius Robinson based on the value that is before us. 6'6", 290, unreal athlete. Kind of the exact opposite. I was actually talking to my buddy last night about him versus Darius Robinson, Stewart versus Robinson. And it's like very similar, but completely opposite. In terms of Shamar is going to be that guy who might run a 4.7 or a 4.6 at 290 versus like Darius was like a 4.96 or something like that off the top of my head. And it's like Shamar is an absolute beast. He's just very, very raw, but he's a great athlete. While Darius was more polished, but not as good of an athlete. So it would be good to have some, your own like Sonic and Knuckles, so to speak, on the defensive line there with Stewart and Robinson. At number 50 for the Seattle Seahawks, I think a boundary corner too is going to be super key for this team. It's a very underrated need. I know you guys have talked about it a lot. And Dave Snigbanosin might be the type of guy I'd look for, but I'd rather have someone who has a little bit more vertical speed. And that's just not available at this point. Like looking it over. Well, actually, I lied completely because I realized PFF still. First off, let's just drag this down right here so you guys have a better look. But that's how you guys are getting behind the scenes. I'm going to go Jamari Harris here out of Iowa. Jamari Harris is an absolute stud at corner. Again, I don't know why Trev hasn't graded him, but he's graded like players like Tony Grimes. But Central Cypress is going to be the placeholder for us. But it's my number 34 player in the class, Jamari Harris. He's someone who is extremely athletic, has a ton of potential, needs to be in that corner 2 mold, which technically he'll be a corner 3, but, Spoon is more of a nickel. And so we're going to be taking him here because I do think that it is necessary for you guys to continue bolstering that corner core. So we got our offensive lineman in the first with Banks, and then we ended up going after our corner here in Jermari Harris out of Iowa. Again, zero clue why Trev has not graded him, because there's certain other players which I assume are just brought in from preseason, but he's somebody who definitely should be considered at least in like the first to second round territory. At 51 for the Chargers, we addressed interior offensive line with Will Campbell in the first, which I know that I've got some glowing approval from. I think at this point, Caleb Johnson is going to be their type of pick. Big Ten running back, someone who is super young, under 600 carries, but still ended up having a fantastic year and carried Iowa on his back. I'm not a big fan of Caleb Johnson to the point where I think it translates to the NFL 1-to-1, but I think that, first off, he's a true junior. Reports are that you either get a first round, second round, or go back to school grade if you're a true junior. And he ended up coming out. I assume that means that he thinks he's going to be a second round pick. So it makes him go in this range. And who would like that style of player? I think Harbaugh would be that type of dude to love a young running back with a lot of touches, but not necessarily a lot of tread lost. So Caleb Johnson going to be coming into the NFL off a red-hot year, but also with plenty of tread. Not easy to find. At 52 for the Buccaneers, they ended up going after Jahad Campbell in the first. Jahad Campbell's a monster. Technically, again, we have all these edge rushers who are slipping, but I mean, right now, these my Panthers fans are getting absolutely showered with love because, I mean, you guys are getting absolute killer value regardless of whatever player falls. But for the Buccaneers, I might want to try to screw over the Panthers a little bit and give this pick to a team that needs an edge rusher just a little bit more. That being said, I do think Jahdae Barron would be a strong consideration for a lot of these teams. He's a fantastic player. I mean, I don't want to give him the short end of the stick. He's a really, really good player. So we're going to go Jahdae Barron for the Buccaneers. Not necessarily a guaranteed corner, but someone who I love to be able to use as a chess piece. And I don't think he has to end up playing in the slot, but I do think that the risk has pushed him down to 52. At number 53 for the Panthers, we ended up going after Mason Graham in the first, and my God, look at what came to us here in the second round. I mean, just unbelievable riches. We could end up waiting to 69 if we want, but you just can't pass up on a potential first-round player like Princely Umanmielen, who, I mean, look at the stats alone, which I think they a little bit overinflate his value, but 20% pass rush win rate. He is a technician to say the least. And an 8.7 run stop rate. I do think this guy definitely is worth a second round pick. And you guys get to snipe him here at 53. At 54 for the Commanders, I still will be going edge. And a lot of really, really good players. And so I think that for the Commanders, I think Donovan Ezero-Waku, I took him last time. I'm going to take him again. Not necessarily the exact mold of edge rusher that I think Dan Quinn would be looking for, which would be more Jack Sawyer. But Donovan Ezero-Waku has just had such a fantastic year that I think you'd be willing to tweak the defense a little bit to allow the best player to join your squad. At 55 for the Denver Broncos, we ended up going after, what do we do in the first? Mecca? Win a Mecca in the first. This is a team that's not super easy to draft for after that because tight end's the easy position for me, but Harold Fannin is not the tight end that I think you guys would be going for. I just don't really see too many areas of massive need. Baron Browning ended up being a see ya. Nick Benito's been doing a great job. Same thing with Jonah Ellis. So I don't really think that's a massive position to address either. You could look at the defensive interior value at this point and try to get someone who's extremely unique like Dayon Walker, Shamar Turner, maybe Darius Alexander, DeMonte Capehart, but I just don't really see the value. And because of that, and there is such great value here, I do see this as a prime trade back spot. Jalen Milroe's available, but again, I just don't really think too many teams are going to be overly excited about Milroe. With the quantity of edges that could be going before 60, because I have a minimum of 2 that would be most likely going, I'm going to move up with the Bills. The Bills ended up taking a defensive interior, Walter Nolan, in the first. I think it's going to be key for them to build up that edge core as well. And I think this is going to be good for the team. You can end up just sending, pick 130 into the equation and then pretty much just fire and forget, baby. Fire and forget. The Bills move up to select their star edge rusher of the draft. And you got Jack Sawyer here, who would be perfect, but I'm actually going to go Mike Green out of Marshall. Mike Green is someone who's getting a ton of hype, a ton of love, and he had a fantastic year, well deserving of it. You could see the sheer... I did not realize he had 17 sacks this year. Oh, my goodness. But granted, not against top-tier talent. I thought he was relatively underwhelming versus Ohio State. People will continuously use the one rep at the end of the game he did well on to be able to move the narrative, but you know what? I kind of do the same thing for some of my guys, so I respect it. Mike Green's still a great player, but I just like to say pump the brakes a little bit. But continuing this this edge phenomena, we have Kamen Rucker here, who I think would be honestly perfect for the Baltimore Ravens. You could talk about Kyle Kennard as well, but Kamen Rucker's not getting enough love. He might just be having a little bit of an injury bug. But Kamen Rucker, not the youngest player on planet Earth, but certainly one of the best. Pairing him up there with Cam Williams to be able to create both sides of the ball with really, really, really good value. At 57 for the Texans, you guys know we're going to go interior offensive line at this point because we went Kenneth Grant in the first. And Tate Ratledge is here. Super high floor. Let's not fuck around. Just get yourself a really good player. At 58 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we ended up going after a corner in the first round, Darian Porter, 6'4", 200 pounds. Just a real quality corner. I think at this point we might want to be looking at running back, and there's a lot of very good ones, like Cam Scatabo being one of them. I think this dude should be a top 64 to 100 pick. Jordan James as well. Because of that, I do feel pretty comfortable not taking one at this spot. And looking at our wide receiver core, because I think Jaden Higgins, first off, Higgins in the Steelers uniform needs to happen this offseason. I don't think it's going to be T. I think it will be Jaden Higgins. I think we need a boundary receiver too that will end up being more the contested catch threat and allow George Pickens to just be George Pickens. Jaden Higgins, fantastic receiver. I love him to death. Happy to see him on my team. Pick number 69, 59 for the Packers. First round went Azariah Thomas here. The quantity of edge rushers is insane. I know that Hafley has had Donovan Zirawaku on his edge core. I'm actually going to go Kyle Kennard here to basically be the cheaper version of Zirawaku. Technically, I have Kennard above Zirawaku, but there's just differing reasons. I would say for the Packers, who would have an instant fit with Zirawaku, Kennard would be lower on their board. But if you look at it holistically, I think Kennard might be the better choice. At 60, though, for the Broncos, I'm actually going to go after just a freak player here and just test out how he performs. That's going to be Deon Walker. He's ending up coming out. I know that you could end up just, utilizing him in a multitude of ways. It's essentially going to be a little bit of a Hail Mary pick, but at the same time, I do think that you have unlimited potential with someone who is going to be 6'6" to 6'7", who has unbelievably quick feet, some pass rush moves that are rare for that build. And you're getting yourself someone who's going to be a little bit of a unique tweener, where you could use them almost as a mismatch at edge on certain downs as well. Very unique player that needs to have a ballsy coach to take him, but I think Sean Payton's that kind of guy. At number 61 for the Buffalo Bills, we already went after our edge rusher. We already went after our defensive interior. That's kind of where I want to be. I'm going to look at wide receiver for this pick. And Ricky White's going to be my guy. I hate to see that Ty Felton's fallen, but Ricky White being even higher in the board rankings is perfect. He's someone who has 4 pump blocks on the year as well, but I count him to mini Marvin Harrison coming into the year, and you allow him to replace that role for Amari Cooper. It is a 1-to-1 fit. For the Eagles, they made a very small move up in the first round to get Mykel Williams. Here in the second round, I think you need to go after Harold Fannin. I know it doesn't fit the general stereotype of Eagles tight ends that are, a little bit more bulky, but I think sometimes you need to flex your morals for the right value, and we're going to go after Harold Fannin here. At number 63 for the Detroit Lions, we went after an interior offensive lineman in the first round, and, well, we thought that might end up biting him in the ass. It didn't, and Jack Sawyer's literally built to be a Detroit Lion, just, blue-collar guy, standard big white dude. If we want to be drilling down to the basics of it, but also just a really good worker and someone who has a lot of passion for the game. If you guys saw how the end of the Ohio State-Michigan game was when he ended up pretty much like cussing and stuff about how pissed off he was. I love seeing football players that have that kind of energy, and I'm sure that Dan Campbell would too. At number 64 for the Kansas City Chief, as as Jamal Charles would say, the Chief. But regardless, let's get past that. For the Chiefs, I think that what do we do in the first round? We went Trey Amos. I think that's actually a really good pick. But you guys could be looking for an upgraded running back behind Isaiah Pacheco. Doesn't really feel like a second round thing for me. I'm going to go after wide receiver here. And I think that you want to go after someone who's a little bit more reliable, who can work into the Sky Moore role. And low-key, that's Xavier Restrepo. Savion Williams would be weird at 6'5" and a rack guy. I do think Savion Williams is extremely overrated. Just going to put that out there. I did not vibe with the tape. Kyron Lacy's a really good receiver as well. Deion Burks returned to school. Get this out of here. Well, I guess he's in the transfer portal. But regardless, you got Jalen Noel, who should be in this equation. But I also really like Xavier Restrepo. Restrepo has just been dominant there for Miami. And, I think he set the all-time reception record for Miami. I'm tripping. He beat Michael Irvin. And so I think that we're going to say the Chiefs, they sometimes take some curveball picks. Xavier Restrepo going high isn't really on my bingo card, but I do think it is possible with how reliable he was. At number 65 for the Las Vegas Raiders, we ended up going, what do we do at the beginning of the second? Tyler Booker, interior offensive line, quarterback, kind of what y'all need to look at. And I'm going to look at wide receiver here as well. I have Isaiah Bond returning, so keep that in mind. But I think that we could honestly wait on wide receiver. There's some good ones. I personally love Ja'Cory Brooks. Bo Collins is very underrated. I don't think he comes out, but you got LeJontay Wester there. Shout out to him. I don't think you need to go after this spot. This is perfect for a running back here. And looking at the guys, again, Jonah Coleman's not coming out in this. Guys, come on. Let's up the quality control here, everybody. But Devin Neal's going to be the guy who I'm looking at. It's him, Jordan James, Cam Scatabo. This group of guys are really talented, but Devin Neal's just been consistent year over year. Just about 600 touches right there overall. Cam Scatabo has a fumbling problem. That's his big issue. He just fumbles the ball. That's the biggest problem with him. And then you got Jordan James here, who is extremely reliable as well. But I'm going to go after Devin Neal because I love Devin Neal. He's a 3-down back. He's improved every single year. And honestly, the thing I love most about Devin Neal is the fact that he just doesn't do anything poorly. And that's a great thing to have on the Raiders, especially. At 66 for the New York Giants, I mean, you guys are in a unique position. You got yourselves your quarterback, your corner. I do think you could potentially go after another wide receiver at this point. And Kyron Lacy has a bond there with why am I tripping up on people's names? Malik Neighbors. Yeah, thinking's hard. English is tough. But Kyron Lacy is honestly someone who I think is just so ridiculously underrated. This team needs more firepower, in my opinion, as well. And for Cam Ward, he needs to be in a situation where they have as much firepower as possible. I'm going to go Kyron Lacy and give him the love he deserves. Stealing him from the New England Patriots, which I know is going to make a couple of y'all a little bit grouchy, but that's okay. The Patriots, we've gone a left tackle. We technically got T. Higgins as well. And then we also ended up landing Travis Hunter as our defensive back. At this point, we're going to be going after defensive line. And you got Tyler Barron here, who I think is extremely underrated, extremely polished, and kind of reminds me of when you took Keon White, who was a little bit more seasoned as a veteran, but someone who still was extremely productive and extremely talented. At number 68 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, so far, we traded back. Did we go interior offensive line? I think we did for y'all. We went Donovan Jackson, yes. So we went interior offensive line, we went corner. Those are the two key positions to address. At this point, I am going to go running back. Please feel free to push back. I do think that it's that's kind of the beauty of this, is that you guys get to, we kind of shave this down kind of like a statue. We got this giant stone, this giant block of marble. And as we're doing mock drafts, we're kind of shaving it down, making sure that, we get to the best outcome overall. And I think Jordan James and Cam Scatabo are two of the next best in the class. And I'm going to go after Jordan James here. I think this dude is extremely underrated. I don't know why, again. I don't get why Trev doesn't like him. But Jordan James, extremely explosive, great vision. I would say good vision, great explosiveness, elusiveness, change of direction, and ball security. This guy has not had a fumble in his entire career. Like, I think he has like 600 touches or something like that, like total, and 0 fumbles. Regardless of the amount of touches, 0 fumbles on all of them. Fantastic. For the Panthers, we've already gone defense, interior, and edge rusher. Could do it again, low-key. But you got to be able to invest in the offense. I'm having Isaiah Bond return in this. Please remember that. That's why I'm like trying to continually emphasize it. Trey Harris actually feels like a pretty solid weapon at this point. I might want to go for someone who's a little bit more reliable. People love Savion Williams. I'm not a big Savion Williams guy myself, but you got Torrey Horton after the catch. Evan Stewart is such a monster. I mean, this guy, if you guys can land this dude in the 4th round, please do it. Like, this is going to literally be Jalen Waddle, but like, I'm tripping balls. Not Evan Stewart. Where the fuck is Tez? There we go. Not Evan Stewart. Tez Johnson. I love Tez. Yeah, no, not Evan. Tez. Tez is just, he's someone who I just adore with all my heart. And actually, you know what? You need someone who's a little bit more smaller and a little bit more explosive, who also does not have some drop issues. 4.9% is perfectly adequate. Look at, how does he have a 50% contested catch rate? I don't think that's going to translate. Don't get me wrong there. That's not gonna be the case. But Tez Johnson's super smooth, super explosive, and he's a good blocker. It's so weird. He's a good blocker at that size. We're going to go Tez. I think y'all deserve someone who's actually going to be skilled, consistent, and explosive. You got Coker. You also have Liggett. Apparently, the guy eats raccoons. The hell? But regardless, you get yourself a stud there. At number 70 for the Kansas City Chief, we are going to be looking possibly a tight end here, but also at the interior of the offensive line, potentially developmental tackle as well. In the 2nd round, we ended up going after Xavier Restrepo. We've gone after a corner as well in Trey Amos. So corner, wide receiver, those are kind of the key positions to draft. We could look at defensive line here as well, because you got guys like Josiah Stewart, where, I know Uche is not necessarily going to be on the team, but you guys did see a potential role for a player of that archetype. Of course, Landon Jackson's here. It kind of is impossible to pass on someone like Landon Jackson, Ashton Gillette, when you're at pick 70. Like, I think I'm going to flex my morals a little bit and go after Landon Jackson at pick number 70. 71 for the Browns. We've already gone after edge rusher Abdul Carter. We also ended up going after Quinshon Judkins. This is where I'm comfortable taking Jalen Milroe. I know it's going to be crazy they slipped this far, but usually if a quarterback doesn't go in the 1st, it's very rare that you see him go in the 2nd. So most of the time they slip to the 3rd. And Jalen Milroe needs a lot of development. I think he should go back to school, but we'll leave that conversation for another time. But for the Raiders, we've gone quarterback. What else have we done for them? We've gone running back, and then we also went guard. So I think we need to look at the defense a little bit. Just a little bit. And if we're going to look at the defense, we need to look at that secondary. The safety core needs help, and there's so many good players here. I'm going to go Xavier Watts to be a ball hawk back there and kind of just be, not your Derwin James, but maybe a little bit like that. Like your Derwin James from targets clearance section. I mean, this dude he led the whole entire country in interceptions last year, and then he has another 5 this year. The dude's just a stud. At 73 for the Chicago Bears, what have we done for y'all? What have we done? We went Marcus Bowe as a guard, and then we went Josh Connerly as a tackle/guard hybrid, depending if you really think, like maybe guard in the short run, tackle in the long. But I do have the vision of him as a tackle. And Ashton Genty. We need to look at defense now. And we have some great edge rushers still available, by the way. I'm looking primarily at Braden Swinson here, who gets like no respect. 6'4", 250, fluid. He has some of the best pass rush wins that I've seen. You also have Josiah Stewart here, who is fantastic, but he's 6'1", 246. It's a little bit of a unique frame. And, I actually really like Josiah Stewart coming into the year, but I mean, you can't really go wrong at this point, and that's the beautiful thing. You can go Josiah Stewart, you can go Gillette if you want a bigger body guy, but you can also go Swinson, and that's just a super tough one for me. I will go Josiah Stewart. I think I have to. He's just been so productive this year. We got to reward him for that, right? Like, we got to do that. We have to, right? Yeah, we got to. All right, so at 74 for the New Orleans Saints, we traded up and we got Tetairoa McMillan. And I felt bad that we didn't get an edge rusher, but I mean, well, shit. We got some great ones here. And we're going to go Braden Swinson. I mean, a guy who was just debating for the Bears. He has some of the best pass rush wins that I've seen. Like, just in terms of quick wins, this guy's been fantastic, so I'm happy to send him there to New Orleans. At 75 for the Washington Commanders, we went after edge rusher as well. Yeah, edge rusher as well as wide receiver. We need to go after a corner, and there's still some really good ones on the board. I honestly think the guy who needs the most love, though, is Dalen Everett. I mean, people just like to shit on him 24/7. Not me. This guy's been a very, very good corner. His ball skills are not there. I mean, just simply put, he needs to look for the ball. But it's someone who I'm going to be willing to stick my flag behind, because I think that's something I would prefer for someone to be able to develop rather than, just praying that they work better as a coverage guy. Number 76 for the Colts, we ended up actually throwing a little bit of a curveball there in the second round. Went edge rusher with JT Tuimoloau. And at this point, this is where I feel very comfortable going after a safety, and that's going to be Kevin Winston here. He hasn't played much this year, but that's the whole entire reason he's slipping. He is someone who a lot of people had as their safety 1, top 32 player. He declared for the draft as a true junior. He's young. And so people just think that, well, he's probably going to be going in the second round, but might end up slipping just a little. At 77 for the Bengals, they took a safety in the second as well as an edge in the first. I think that your guys' position, you might even go back-to-back-to-back defense, but let's look at offensive line here at this point. Like, I'm looking potentially at a long-term offensive tackle, but I'm actually going to go for someone who's going to be on the interior of the offensive line. I like Gray Zabel here. North Dakota State has had a fantastic year, and also is someone who can transition to center or guard. And I like that flexibility to be able to have him develop underneath all the offensive linemen that you do already have and protect Joe Burrow even more. At 78 for the Dallas Cowboys, we've already moved up for a defensive interior, and we also got our running back, if I got that correct, yes, with TJ Sanders. So at this point, it's wide receiver, which I do think, again, Isaiah Bond returning in this simulation. I think we could go for a wide receiver at this point. I do think it gets a little bit thin. I also think that, I know there's a Brock Hoffman train. I would just say Jaden Roberts, probably a better option. Just saying. Just going to put that out there. But you know what? I actually do think that you guys could be in the market for that wide receiver. I think that would be a smart decision. And you could go edge rusher here, to be fair. I mean, you could go Ashton Gillette at this point and say, like, hey, we're going to get somebody to, or Antoine Powell-Ryland, for all I care, for someone to be able to be the backup there for the loss of DeMarcus Lawrence, which he could come back. Probably should, probably will. But wide receiver seems to be the easiest position to fill. You could go down the street to Savion Williams, but I'm not fully sold on him. He also has a 10% drop rate. Ty Felton, I think, would be the better pick. He's going to be like literally Brandon Cooks, and he's so good. He just had a 3-drop game just to end off the season, which is why his drop rate dropped so much, or raised so much. So I think that would be the only reason that gives me pause. At 79 for the San Francisco 49ers, we've gone after defense, interior, and tackle. You could go after a corner 3 at this point because the value is incredible. However, I am going to be going after edge rusher here because, again, I do really like the guys who are here. Like Antoine Powell-Ryland's a stud. I mean, I really think that he's very underrated. Jared Ivey's really good, but Ashton Gillette is just somebody who is going to be super unique in terms of the push he has on the pocket. He's been doing a phenomenal job this year because he had a slow start to the year and still ended off, if I'm not mistaken, doing 1 pressure more than he did the year before. This guy gets consistent pressure on the pocket, and I think that's super key to have, especially for the Niners at this point, especially with the edge core that you guys do have. Continue to get guys who can develop the line of scrimmage on both sides, and I think you're going best player available right there. At 80 for the New England Patriots, we got T. Higgins, essentially, a left tackle, as well as an edge rusher, which is like crazy value with Tyler Barron. At this point, we actually might want to get a penetrating defensive interior, and I'm actually going to go Darius Alexander, defensive interior out of Toledo. I think that dude's an absolute stud. At number 81 for the Arizona Cardinals, we got to get some offensive line help here. We got to do something. Actually, Blake Miller's a quality right tackle. He's just not very exciting, so that's the only reason why he's going this range, but it's well worth the selection at 81. At 82 for the Seattle Seahawks, we got to go and get our contingency plan at wide receiver for the aging Tyler Lockett. That's exactly what Jalen Noel is. And Jalen Noel is a top 100 player for me. Like, where's he at? He's number 99. There you go. And number 99 on my board. I'm going to show him the love that he deserves. And number 83 for the Los Angeles Chargers. We've gone after interior offensive line as well. What did we do in the last round with Caleb Johnson? So at this selection, tight end certainly is available. I think this is where we can take someone like Mason Taylor out of LSU. Got to get something of an upgrade there at tight end, and Mason Taylor might just be that. At 84 for the Buccaneers, we went after Jahdae Barron. We've gone after Jihad Campbell. And at this point, we got to go after wide receiver as well. We're actually going to go after Andrew Armstrong, wide receiver he's out of Arkansas. Of course, none of these guys he's not listed here, but we're going to allow Julian Fleming to get that ADP boost. Where is he at on my board? Because I absolutely love the guy. And again, wide receivers haven't been fully updated, but Andrew Armstrong at 67 overall, ridiculous value. At 85 for the Rams, technically if they bring back Alaric Jackson, it muddies up what they do in the first, but they went left tackle for me. We're going to be going a corner here for them. And I just think that if you want to maximize someone who has a relative lack of athleticism, you send them to the Rams, and that's what Denzel Burke kind of brings to the table. At 86 for the Saints, they're also going to go to Ohio State for a corner here because we do have Davison Igbinosun, who is slipping just solely because he's very, very, very physical. And I think that he'd actually work really well with Kool-Aid McKinstry and the squad. At 87 for the Denver Broncos, we're also going to go a tight end here. And, based on the guys available, I actually really like Jake Brenningstool. Doesn't grade out well, but he's going to be at the Senior Bowl, and I think he's going to eat there. Had 2 touchdowns versus versus SMU as well. At 88, we got the Baltimore Ravens, and I actually would be debating going at interior offensive line here with Charles Grant. Freak athlete. We've already gone after our future tackle as well with Cam Williams. And so I actually really like the potential of that move there with Charles Grant. At 89 with the Houston Texans, an underrated need is wide receiver. Nico Collins doesn't stay healthy. Diggs up for a contract. One thing you don't have is like a massive deep threat outside of Nico, and that's going to be Trey Harris there out of Mississippi. At 90 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you could look at quarterback right here. Beck, Ewers, Howard, Gabriel. Just wait to the 4th round. I mean, there's no need for it. The backup quarterback is the least valuable position, in my opinion, in the NFL. What do they do if they're not able to play? And that's pretty much ride the bench. So at number 90, we've gone wide receiver with Jaden Higgins. We've gone cornerback as well with Darian Porter. So I think the smart thing to do at this point is to look at that running back room. And even though he has issues with fumbling, he's honestly had to carry his entire team. I'm going to go Cam Scatabo out of Arizona State. He just feels like an Arthur Smith guy, does he not? Like he does. At 91 for the Green Bay Packers, let's get our defensive interior loaded up here. We're going to go Alfred Collins. We've gone after edge rusher. We've gone after corner. Let's go after that defensive interior. Let's just continue loading up that defense. At 92 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm actually going to look at a wide receiver here because the value is just really solid to be able to select someone who I love to death and is a top 40 player on my board. It's Ja'Cory Brooks. And if people want to talk about that drop rate, people absolutely slobber for the knobber over Savion Williams. And he has a worse drop rate. So I'm just going to put that out there. 93 for the Cleveland Browns. We've gone after quarterback. We've gone after running back. We've gone after edge rusher. Now let's try to get a project tackle at this point and see if he can end up developing. That's going to be Ozzie Trapilo, who's had some fantastic games this year versus top talent. We're going to go after him. At 94 for Philly, we've gone after edge. We've gone after tight end. Could try to go for another project, which Emory Jones is. You guys know how much I like taking Emory Jones to the Eagles. I want to see him succeed. He was my tackle 1 at the start of the year. And for a lot of people, and he just fell off. He ended up declaring, which means that there's still some stock there. I think the price tag is too high right now to be able to bring back. Why am I tripping up on his name? Mekhi Becton. And Emory Jones could fill in that role perfectly as he develops to potentially be that right tackle of the future. At 95 for the Jets, we have our right tackle of the future in Membu. We also have our tight end, our star tight end as well in Tyler Warren. We're going to go after that second corner here. And I'm not going to go after DJ McKinney. I just don't think he comes out in this because otherwise I would, well, I guess it is realistic to potentially go after him, but I'm actually going to go after Quincy Riley, who was an interception beast, really good athlete, and just super high floor player. For the Chiefs at 96, I think this is where we can end up taking a running back because the value is just that good for Travion Henderson. At 97 for the Vikings, we're also going to look at that running back room. We took guard early on. We're going to go Taj Brooks. This guy is fantastic. Like really, really underrated back. Taj Brooks is going to be the selection there. 5'10", 230. This dude's an absolute bowling ball, but he's explosive as hell. At number 98 for the Miami Dolphins, this is where we're going to look at offensive line. You got Jaden Roberts here. You got Johnny Cornelius, which I don't think a Johnny Cornelius moves the needle for me at all, but still worth bringing up his name. Because of that, there really is one guy who I think would be worth it here, and that is Jaden, who had a struggle year, but one of the most high potential players in the whole entire country. At number 99 for the Titans, we've gone after wide receiver. We've gone, what the hell else have we done for the Titans? This was basically a free pick via a trade back with Miami. We got wide receiver, as well as in the first I'm just kidding, edge rusher. So at this point, you could look at offensive tackle again, kind of like weaned out a lot of the options there. I would honestly you could look at quarterback at this point. You know what? This is where you could end up taking a swing on someone like Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck. I'm going to go after Quinn Ewers for the Titans at 99. At 100 for the Rams, I would have loved Quinn Ewers for this team, but not available. Not available. So looking at the other options available, we've gone after corner, we've gone after tackle. Let's go and get that late third linebacker. And I mean, Jack Kaiser, not the biggest athlete guy, but the Rams know how to use these white dudes. They know what's up. And so he's going to be like the new Rose Boom of the defense. And at 101 for the 49ers, I actually really like Gunnar Helm to the squad. It feels very similar to Jared Wiley last year. Get someone to be able to grow and develop underneath Kittle in his final year. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I wanted to be able to squeeze it into an hour, so I'm so glad you were able to join with me on this journey. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.